So for this project, you're going to be creating a set of 4 different advertisements for Harley Davidson motorcycles. When you download the Add Project folder, here's what I'm giving to you. First off, there's a text file that has all of the text information about each of the advertisements. And there's 4 different ones. Pay close attention to the name of it. So this is the text information for the CVO breakout. And there's also a picture that goes along with it. So here's the breakout motorcycle that goes with that text. Same thing for the Softail, the 48, and the Super Low. Inside of this text, I'm giving you the name of the motorcycle, a little tagline or a punchline that goes along with it, the price, some performance information, and then finally a little write-up blurb that goes with your body copy. All of the text is set up exactly the same. They're just changing out the information. So when you do your ads, each of the 4 ads can have a similar look and feel, but just changing out the info and maybe even the color scheme and of course the pictures for your ads too. Now, you're creating 4 different advertisements. I want 2 of them to be a vertical or portrait style and 2 of them to be a landscape or a horizontal style. And you can choose to use Photoshop, Indesign, Illustrator, whatever you're most comfortable with. For me, I'm most comfortable working in Indesign. So I'm going to get started on this and give you some things to think about, but I'm going to use Indesign to set up my document. Now, when I create a new document, keep in mind, you're going to create 4 different advertisements. So you need to have 4 different documents, or at least 4 different pages set up for each one. We're all working in inches, and I want each of those to be 4 by 7s. So in other words, if I wanted this one to be my portrait one, I'll make it 4 inches wide and 7 inches tall. If you're going to make your landscape, make it of course 7 inches wide and 4 inches tall. Since I'm working in InDesign, I'll just keep everything exactly the same. I don't need facing pages, and I'll create my new document, which will give me something set up to look like this. Now, I did add some margins in here, but the first thing that I want to do is to bring in all of my text that I have. So I'm going to start off with just one of these. Let's do the breakout first. When I open up this text file, I want to be able to group together all of the like information. I don't just want to select all of it and copy it in there. So this is the title or the name of what I'm creating. So I'll copy that and then jump into my software and I'll place it inside of its own individual text box. I'm not worrying about fonts, I'm not worrying about placement. All I want to do now is just go back and forth and place everything inside of its own area. I call this laying out my puzzle pieces. If you ever put together a puzzle, the first thing you want to do is to dump out all the pieces onto your table to get a look and feel for where all the colors are, where all the like styles and textures are, and then you go back later and you start to find out where to place it. But this gives me a rough idea of exactly how much room each little area takes up. So real quickly, let's put everything in its own text box, and finally let's get this body copy. Now if you're working in Photoshop, of course you're going to be putting everything on its own individual layer or also within its own text and type box too. And since I've got a photograph, the photograph definitely needs to be placed in there as well. This also, for the photograph, I want you to use that Photoshop technique where we either remove or do something with the background so that you're emphasizing or showcasing the bicycle or the motorcycle, excuse me, by itself. So I'm not just want to put the picture on here. Later on I'm going to do some editing for this. Now, the next thing I need to do is to make some choices about what's going to be my attention-getting information. Now on this, it's quite simple. I definitely want the name of my motorcycle to be the largest attention-getting thing. This is what I call my Papa Bear information. Papa Bear by meaning it's going to be, it's the first thing my eyes see. It's the first thing that should be bold or large and just stand out amongst everything else. So when I make that, I'm going to make that nice and centered and bold and set to there. Everything else is going to be smaller in some way. The next thing I need to do is to think about Well, how do I want to lay this out so that I can also use it for other ad layouts as well? And there's lots of different things you could do. What we're essentially thinking of is a hierarchy or creating a grid type system that I can place all of my stuff inside of here. Now this is where your margins come in handy. I've got some relatively thick margins on this, I think about 1/2 inch. But if I need to change it up, maybe I'll go to my margins and I'll set those to be just 0 all the way around so I can see my entire page and have it nice and breathable. If I want, I can set up a grid of placements, or in my case, I'm just going to keep it nice and simple. I'll keep this in the center. All of my other text needs to flow around this in some way. Now this is my solution. I want to see your solution. There's more than one way you can set up an advertisement. But if that's going to be the biggest and I start placing other things on here, I'm going to make sure it's slightly smaller. If I'm dealing with things like the price of something, you could keep all of this exactly the same. Now I would say the price is probably the second most important part of this. When I see it, I got the name, I want to know how much it would cost. But this is the price. The starting at is really just some secondary information. If it was me, here's some things that you could do. Maybe I would put my price on its own individual line, and you could do the starting at as a little bit smaller. This way it emphasizes this. You could even make this bolder or bigger. Another pet peeve is instead of having just the $sign the same size as the numbers in there, what I like to do is set that as a superscript up at the top. And so now that's nice and out of the way. That has a better hierarchy than anything else. From here I can take it, I can scale it down and be whatever size I need it to be. And I can place it within my design where I want it to go. The other information, things like the performance. So if I'm reading this, I've got a list of things, but this is the title for it. And I don't want my title to look the same or have the same style as everything else in my list. I want to set it off and have it be unique. There's a couple of things you could do. The easiest thing we could do is I could set this off to be much larger. I can make it bold. Or conversely, I could select everything that's below here and I can make it smaller. I can make it italic. I kind of like it kept at regular, maybe even a condensed style. Maybe not that. Let's see what else we could do. It does depend on the font that you've got chosen. Maybe I'll keep it regular, but I'll set it down to be a little bit smaller for here. The other way of adding some difference between your headline and your other list copy is to indent all of your copy. In InDesign, it's easy enough to go up to the top and push everything over by doing a left alignment indentation. So now when I read this, I'm seeing performance as being a headline and everything else falls underneath it and it's set apart. So it's got a good contrast between those two things. Then of course I've got my body copy. Body copy can fit nicely inside of here. And it really is meant to go along with the overall layout of my entire design. Now that I've got all the stuff on here, I still haven't chosen any particular font. This is just the default font that comes up to it. I've got a sense of hierarchy and of structure. If I need to, let's say I wanted to make the price to be more prominent, I can make that much larger. Now it stands out. I've got my body copy. Now I get a good sense of how much room is going to be taken up for my overall design and my layout. Then I can do things like look at my photograph and see how large I can make it, where I can place it, send it to the back in this case, and some other little styles and layouts that can go along with this too. We're still a long way from finishing it up, but you can see where I can move things around. So for instance, if I wanted to have my title nice and big and in the center, we'll put this underneath here. I see I've got plenty of room to put the starting at price. Maybe I can scale down my performance text. And there's a good balanced style layout. Now, I'm not necessarily convinced that that's good there. Maybe I'll make this a little bit larger. So there's one particular way I can lay this out. Another way I could lay this out is by having some sort of axis to have everything aligned to. Of Creating an axis simply means by dragging off some sort of guide. So if I wanted my eyes to flow along this particular edge, I would have all of my stuff aligned to this particular alignment. So let's do that for this. So maybe I'll take this and we'll push it over to the left and right hand side. So there it is, lined up to there. We'll have this text, and we'll scale it down to fit inside of that. Hey, if you want, you can even remove the quotation marks, if anything that's a little bit redundant. So I'll give you permission to set that up. There's that for there. So we'll move that over. All of my other text can be aligned to this guideline that I've given too. So in this case, maybe I'll pull it over to this side, and we'll set that to be right aligned, push that way. So that's looking good there. And of course my body copy, we don't want that to stick out too. We'll set that over to the left hand side. So here's another viable layout for my advertisement. Everything has this nice strong alignment for this right here. So this is what I mean by playing around with the layout for it. The best part about this, once I get a look and feel for one advertisement, I can use this same layout for my other advertisements. I got to have another page for, let's say I wanted to do the Softail Deluxe. All I've got to do is replace the information from this text into this one, and then I've got my second ad already created out. Now, the last thing I want you to do is to, of course, pick some fonts that are appropriate for this. If you're trying to sell motorcycles, what comes to mind when purchasing, or who uses motorcycles? What kind of images would you want to work with? And what are some adjectives that really describe that? Right now, when I think of motorcycles, I think of them as being gritty. I think of the open road. I think of freedom. I don't necessarily think of it being too stuffy or old school. It's just something that's definitely for younger people or even nostalgic people. They're looking for. This isn't a good font. Maybe I'd want to find a font that gives me that kind of nostalgic kind of feel or look to my design. And so I can't really tell you what would be best for yours. That's what I want to see you work out for. But is this a good answer? Maybe, maybe not. The final thing to do is, of course, pull in some color for this. Now, the quickest and easiest thing to do is use the colors from your photograph. Pull samples of different parts of it. Each of these is full of great colors that can be used. Or if you don't want to use the colors from your product, I've given you some extra images. Now, these extra images can be used anywhere in your layouts for any of your advertisements. They have people, they have open roads, they have landscapes. I've even given you access to the Harley Davidson logo, so you can incorporate the logo into your design as well. I'm not requiring the logo, but this does need to have at least some sort of good looking style that incorporates the colors of an image, and also some good text and fonts too. So this is where I'm going to leave you. This is how I would start the design. For your project, I want to see how you would finish out this design. So this is a layout for a 4-inch wide by 7-inch tall advertisement. You're going to create one more 4x7, and then finally create another set of advertisements that are 7 inches wide and 4 inches tall. When you finish these up, I want you to save each one of them either as a JPEG or as a PDF, and that's what you're going to upload to the class Moodle page for credit on this project.